That's pretty cool. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, everybody. So, I have a new episode for you. I know there's a lot of delay in this episode, but I kind of feel like that's been the theme of this summer season or this past summer season. Unfortunately, I've had a lot of ups and downs with the podcast, and what I've taken in from it is that there are a lot of people that don't want me to be successful. That's quite all right. But there are a lot of people that do want me to be successful. And I think some of you are listening. So I just want to say thank you to all of my listeners, all of my supporters, all the people that are trying to help me get there. Because there are people that don't want me to get there, and they just want to be on the show. Literally, or begging to be on the show. Anyway, I digress. I have a great new episode to introduce to you, episode 9. We're with my dear friends Lindsey and Britt from Texas. They have their very own podcast. It's called Can We Start Over? We have a wonderful conversation. I also appear as a guest on their show, so you will be able to learn more about me from that episode. But without further ado, I introduce episode 9, Lindsey and Britt of Can We Start Over podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Pixelated, but I'm fine with it. I know it'll clear up once it's finished uploading, so we're all
Cool.
good.
Cool.
Okay, so I'm gonna get started, and then I'll pass the mics over to you. Hi everybody, it's Anura Mathis, the host of Freedom to Fight, and I have another couple of guests on my show, my dear friends. I'm Lindsey and Britt. I'm gonna let them introduce themselves, and we'll get started.
Hi, I'm Britt. I am an audio engineer and a photographer, and my wife Lindsay and I have a podcast called Can We Start Over?
Yeah, my name's Lindsey, and I'm a mindfulness teacher and a somatic practitioner. Like Britt said, we co-host a podcast called Can We Start Over that was inspired by our own starting over journey that began last year.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. When did you start the podcast? I guess, month?
Our podcast started in January of this year.
At this year.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Our journey was the starting over journey started last year.
Okay. I was just a couple of months ahead of you starting this podcast. It was July of last year, so
Oh, cool.
Amazing.
I'm a year in now. Yeah.
Cool.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah, July is actually of last year is when we decided to start over.
Yeah. And when we decided to start a podcast too.
Yeah.
Nice. Hey, we're on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to my show. Thanks so much for coming on and letting me interview you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem. I really like the space that you're in. Like, it's good warm lighting. It feels like it's comfortable there. I hope you're comfortable there.
Yeah, the wood paneling. I love a house with wood paneling. I don't know why, but it always just feels like comfortable.
Yeah, feels
Yeah.
really nice.
I guess let me ask you really fast. I know that you're looking to be somewhere permanent. I mean, you're permanent in that city, but you're looking for like a permanent residence. Like, what would your ideal home look like?
Ooh, good question.
That's fun.
Oh man, that feels tough to answer because my brain is kind of swamped with looking at like rentals and Airbnbs and this and that. But I think at the end of the day, I know that my perfect home has a nice outdoor space with like a lot of room to grow things and relax. room for our 3 kids to run around. It doesn't have to be huge, cozy on the inside, but enough bedrooms for everyone, and a nice big kitchen where we can like come together.
Yeah.
Nice. I want all those things. I'd like to have a view.
View is nice.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to walk out the front door and feel inspired,
I think it's important. Yeah.
which was a big reason we started over and left home, was like, I wanted to walk out of my house and want to be there.
Yeah.
Good point.
What's inspiring to you? What type of view is inspiring to you?
Ooh, well, I love the mountains here. It's beautiful. I love water. If I can have water or mountains, that's great. Or just a neighborhood with like lots of plants. I just want like plants.
Yeah.
Nature, I guess. Yeah. Interesting. I haven't really thought about it in depth, but yeah, I want plants. I want things to grow. I feel like that's a metaphor. Like I need things growing around me all
I
the
like it.
time. Yeah. Like in Texas, it was mostly concrete and strip malls. I mean, I'm sure that's all I was seeing. That was my story to myself, was it's all concrete and strip malls. I need to get out of here. It's all just hot sun reflecting off of concrete onto my face. So
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so miserable in Texas. The heat is so miserable. Is what I'm referring to. It.
right, yeah.
I need plants. I got one in the corner, but with all the moving that I've done in the past couple of years, I've lost a lot of my plants.
Yeah.
And it's so, I feel like I'm losing a part of myself when I have to like get rid of a plant. So, I'm the same way. I need mountains and water. And so, I was so fortunate the last place I lived in when I started the podcast. I had a mountain view and a view of like a reservoir and a city view all in one. It was so great. But I just was not in the right place. Like I wasn't around the right people.
Sure.
I have to be careful, being a person of color, coming to an area where there's not a lot of people of color. I already stick out. And then, if there's even by accident an interaction or an altercation, what have you with somebody in your environment, it's like they're watching you. Like they're making sure you don't cause any trouble. So living in a very rich neighborhood at that time, and like that's unheard of, like having all 3 of those views, and like and my rent was like like $400 cheaper than it is now. Having all of that at my disposal, I felt very fortunate, but it just really was not the right place.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that actually reminded me of another aspect of like my dream home would be proximity to not necessarily a city, but like a gathering point for community. And that could be a city, it could be large or small or somewhere in between, but like somewhere that inspiration happens like together.
Yeah.
I want diversity too. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I need my kids growing up with everyone. That's also part of why we went on this trip, is to try to get as far around the world and meet as many new people as possible.
That's so true.
And I need that in my life. I feel like they need that in their lives.
Yeah.
I'm super fortunate the way I grew up, I guess, in ways in Texas. I was around people of all different kinds of cultures, and it's so ingrained in me that I really notice it when I don't have it. So having some sense of community would be nice. I'm like, oh, I'm pretty isolated here. Yeah.
We've noticed it on our trip too in certain places.
Mm-hmm.
Goodness. Well, I'm really not going to make this formal at all. I think the best things happen when it's just casual. So,
Yeah.
I'm a mental health professional, a trauma therapist. I practice talk therapy and EMDR therapy as well. So I'm going to jump in and talk about mental health, and ask both of you, what your view is on therapy as a healing modality, if you've gone to therapy individually or as a couple, and just things around that. So I'll just start with one question. What's your take on therapy?
Well, I think everyone needs therapy, no matter how you feel. If you feel you're doing great, if you feel you're not doing great, I think therapy is great for everyone. Being able to hear an outside voice that isn't just your brain working, your ego working to keep you safe in ways that maybe aren't the best for you. Maybe it thinks they are, but you got to have an outside opinion, I think, and support. Outside support really is important. And I have done solo therapy. We've gone to couples counseling. Yeah, that's my take.
Cool take.
Thanks, bro.
I also very strong proponent of all forms of therapy. I'm like my first experience. It's funny because no one in my family was going to therapy like ever, and I think we're of that age where that's probably true, especially from the South. And yet when I think the first time I started going to therapy, just knew that's what I needed for a while when I was like 21. No one told me, no one, it was just, I was just like, oh, I'm like having a really hard time. I'm going to go to therapy for a while. And it really helped. And so then that became, over the years, I would like go back into it, and it became a really important part of my healing journey.
I think that's great. I had a similar experience. Like, I don't think I started until I was in my late 20s. But just because, like you were saying, like, nobody in my family went to therapy. Like, nobody like supported that idea. They were like, just go to church or whatever. I wasn't even like raised in a traditional church. So but it's part of, Black culture really is to lean into religious and like spiritual teaching. And I think that's very relevant. But yeah, I didn't have any support in that, and I still don't feel like I've supported that in my family. So it's great that you both have found it separately and that you've gone together. And I really, from the couples that I've talked to, find that it really strengthens the relationship. And I guess I want to know what that was like as a couple to go to therapy.
Good question. I also want to say that just to make us real and take responsibility, for a lot of years, we were like so unaware of our patterns together. And as a couple, we got so busy. It's just actually like the story of so many people. You get so busy working and you're in this relationship, but it's all just going through the motions. And it really, I don't think it clicked for us that there was like work to do between us until we had kids. And even probably in a couple years into having kids, we were like, oh, we need to also work on what's happening between us. It's time for us to take responsibility for this instead of just seeing the other person as the issue.
Yeah. Kids have a funny way of doing. I don't have children, but I've worked with children, and I was a child at some point. So, but children have a funny way of pointing out, like, y'all gotta deal with this.
Right.
It makes you realize your patterns too, how they reflect how you were brought up and how your parents interacted with each other. And there's so many times that I'm like, oh, I need to take a step back. I'm like remembering my parents in this situation when I was a kid and how that affected me.
Can I ask you then, what was that like for the two of you? I mean, you can answer obviously separately, but like, what was your upbringing? Like, what was that like? Just growing up, like, what was it like in your families?
Well, my family, I have 3 older brothers that are way older than me, 6, 8, and 10 years older than me. So when I was very young, they were around, and they didn't get along with my parents at all. There was lots of fighting. like physically, arguing. There wasn't a lot of money either, so that always adds to the stress of life. And then they all, left the house, and I got the experience of being an only child after that for a while. But at that point, I think my parents just they were absolutely not happy together. So it was a lot of me not even seeing my parents. Yeah, and I think that was kind of common in the 90s too, like the latchkey kid thing, where you're just coming and going, and it's like having roommates. Your parents are like roommates for a while. So that's how it was for me. And my parents definitely did not have a good relationship, and they waited to really get divorced until after I went to college, which I feel like was a disservice to me and to them. That if they weren't happy together, shouldn't stay together for me, because that's not doing anyone any favors. So that's how that went.
How interesting that perhaps manifested into you being in communications, like improving communications, an audio engineer, like you know, yeah, like. And I was gonna say with you, Lindsey, that I feel like people that are healers are put in one way or another, put in this situation where they're like mediating. I did that like my whole life, and I'm sure that's why I've chosen this path, because it's so natural to try to like resolve I mean, like, even present day, like trying to find a better place to live, I'm like in the middle of things and trying to advocate for myself. And it's interesting how that happens. I'm sure it's in some sort of literature that this is like our destiny. Yeah, anyway. I wonder if I could choose something else. I don't know. I think in our interview I talked about how this was kind of chosen for me, but I think podcasting is a good way to use my voice and communications and things like that. But I don't. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I just don't. I don't want people to believe that I like know all the answers or anything. Like, I want people to listen to me, and I want to provide healing, but I'm just a person, like I've got all my stuff just like everybody else does. So, anyway. Okay, so let me ask, uh, totally fine if there's any question that I ask that you're uncomfortable with, but I've been talking a lot about alternative ways of healing. I listened to an episode of yours on psychedelics, which is a really profound episode. So I want to ask you, like, what other ways do you find healing in, and what are those ways?
Cool. Great question. I okay. I want to preface this by saying that in addition to talk therapy, I also use somatic work. My spiritual practice is a huge part of my healing, inner child work, internal family systems, and I also am an advocate and a sometime user of psychedelics if in a healing way. And that's different. I previously had experience with psychedelics. I mean, I was like a party person in high school. So, there was like psychedelics happening at an early age that maybe switched something on in my brain at that time. I'm not exactly sure, but it wasn't really until about 2 years ago that I came back to psychedelics in a ceremonial and medicinal way. And it's completely different. Yeah, and I'm not the person that has sat in ceremony like 60 times, but I've been part of several plant medicine, at least specifically psilocybin ceremonies, and it can be profoundly healing. I think especially when we have other modalities or practices at play. So like we can use the information that we it opens up this gateway in this portal to like really profound information from beyond whatever you want to call it. It's from somewhere else, or it's just that your brain is that much more powerful. They can both be true. And also having a stable foundation for that to fall into is like how I personally could really integrate what I learned from psychedelics.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. That's important in any form of healing. I have to ask another question before you answer. I just want to know, because I've had this discussion with other people before. I talked to a shaman about this before, actually. The difference between using psychedelics or using plant medicine as sorry, somebody's walking by here, as recreational matters compared to ceremonial. And I feel like there's some crossover, because I feel like, I mean, I drank when I was younger and I don't anymore. And I was like trying to do what other people were doing, and I never found that relief or satisfaction. But I have been using cannabis, and I feel like recreational use is like ceremonial in some way. Like, it's not like, I don't want to like, I don't want to diminish any practices in general, but like, I don't see the separation. Like, I understand it because I've watched documentaries, I've talked to other people about it, I've listened to your podcast. I just like, I don't see the huge difference. Like, you're finding relief in both realms. And so I don't know if there's anything to ask, but I'm like trying to like find a way to clarify the two, or the difference.
Yeah, good question. I mean, recreationally, you just, chug it back and you go have fun with your friends and you're all laughing and I'm sure it's a great time. And ceremonially or medicinally, you're setting an intention to work through something, or to heal some part of you, or to see something in a different way. And then hopefully it's facilitated by someone who just really has a strong ethical base in what they're doing. Not only that they have a deep reverence for the earth and plants, because it's plant medicine, but also that they have like a deep reverence for the human connection, and that it's a very vulnerable place. So I think those two things are really important, that if someone's going to work with plant medicine in a ceremonial setting, really finding that facilitator that is like, you're for sure that you vibe with,
And when you're back from college, you can just stay with either one of us, but you need to get rid of your organ. There's no place to put your organ. And I'm like, whoa, this is a very awkward conversation.
Huh.
My whole family is not good at communicating, so that's major avoidance. So there's an example of, the communication in my family.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, interesting. I never thought of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Really interesting. Yeah.
It's an extension of your healing.
Exactly. You, oh my gosh, that's so true. Right. Cool. Great question. I want to, well, okay. I want to preface this by saying that in addition to talk therapy, I also use somatic work. My spiritual practice is a huge part of my healing, inner child work, internal family systems, and I also am an advocate and a sometime user of psychedelics for if in a healing way. And that's different. I previously had experience with psychedelics. I mean, I was like a party person in high school. So, there was like psychedelics happening at an early age that maybe switched something on in my brain at that time. I'm not exactly sure, but it wasn't really until about 2 years ago that I came back to psychedelics in a ceremonial and medicinal way. And it's completely different. Yeah, and I'm not the person that has sat in ceremony like 60 times, but I've been part of several plant medicine, at least specifically psilocybin ceremonies, and it can be profoundly healing. I think especially when we have other modalities or practices at play. So like we can use the information that it opens up this gateway in this portal to like really profound information from beyond whatever you want to call it. It's from somewhere else, or it's just that your brain is that much more powerful. They can both be true. And also having a stable foundation for that to fall into is like how I personally could really integrate what I learned from psychedelics. Oh, yeah, good question. I mean, recreationally, you just, chug it back and you go have fun with your friends and you're all laughing and I'm sure it's a great time. And ceremonially or medicinally, you're setting an intention to work through something or to heal some part of you or to see something in a different way. And then hopefully it's facilitated by someone who just really has a strong ethical base in what they're doing. Not only that they have a deep reverence for the earth and plants because it's plant medicine, but also that they have like a deep reverence for the human connection and that it's a very vulnerable place. So I think those two things are really important, that if someone's going to work with plant medicine in a ceremonial setting, really finding that facilitator that is like, you're for sure that you vibe with, you know? Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
No, that's a good segue actually, because I have used recreational psychedelics and I've done ceremony, and I totally agree with you. And I think it's different for every person. And I think the biggest difference is your intention going into it. Um, because I could be with a bunch of friends and somebody pull out a bag of mushrooms, and this isn't anything that I do anymore. It's just not what I'm up to now. Not that I won't, but I've done that plenty of times, and we just sit and talk and or play music or whatever and have a great time. And I do feel like there's some healing in that and some introspection. But in ceremony, like Lindsey said, there's usually facilitators, and you're going in with a set intention, and you're by yourself. You could be with other people, but your whole deal is by yourself. And maybe you're laying there, maybe your eyes are covered, maybe you're laying there for hours, just going through and really digging for something. Because one of the beautiful things about psilocybin, um, in my experience, and I know a lot of other people's experiences, you can navigate while you're doing that. Other things like LSD, that's a chemical, maybe you don't have as much control over what's going on, and maybe you do. Like I say, it's different for everyone, but with psilocybin, especially for me, I can really navigate. So I'm not worried about taking some and then everything going dark and a dragon chasing me, and maybe that will happen. I don't know. But when I'm laying there, I can kind of navigate and work on the things that I want. And I think the time that I did like a lot in a ceremony, like a lot, I just kind of felt like I left my body, and I was just going through this kind of dark space, seeing everything around me, and just realizing that, I know it sounds weird, but just like nothing's real. Nothing, we're all just the same thing, that death wasn't real. I was like, oh, time isn't in a straight line. I'm just here floating, and I just am. Which sounds really abstract, but at that point, I'm not afraid of death. From then on, I'm sitting there like, death isn't real. It's just another part of life, or just another part of being. And that changed my life. Mm-hmm. Just seeing that. And some people will see God, or whatever happens to them can be life-changing. And I think that's so awesome for anyone to take whatever they can from that. But I really think it's like a doorway into your own subconscious, to maybe the truth that's inside of you that you can't normally tap into, or don't. I think we're kind of trained to reject any truth that's really in us, to adhere to social norms. Really,
Mm-hmm.
just like everything is concrete. Like I was saying, I wear shoes all the time. Even in the house, I wear shoes. And one day I was just like, why am I, like, we hate the earth. We hate nature. Like, it's going to take some work for me to go be on the grass right now. Like, I have to take off my shoes and my socks mentally and be comfortable with it. I've been taught to not be comfortable, just walking in the grass, just some weird thing like that. And then I have this experience where I'm like, well, I am the grass, or whatever. We're all just, God, it's so woo-woo, but I'm embracing it.
Yeah.
I'm embracing the woo.
No, I don't use that terminology. I hope you don't hear my dog, and there's a baby crying. Okay, good. That's where I'm turning away, because I'm trying to make sure the sound's not being disrupted. But thank you for that sharing. Like I feel like maybe this is something I can experience. I've been really like conditioned to think like psychedelics and drugs are the devil, and if you try them, you're helping the devil, and you're like gonna go crazy, and just all of the most terrible things in life. And I talked about on our I don't know when this episode will come out compared to when your episode will come out, probably around the same time. But talking about my cannabis shoes and how people have treated me and my relationship with that, like I'm still working through that. So I feel like if I open the door to anything else, like what kind of struggle is that going to be? But to have an experience like that, to like be able to, I feel like that you had an experience of just of life. Like you were saying it's super abstract. I think you're just in an abstract realm. Like I just feel like that's, like you're just in a different part of it. But
And as abstract as it was also the most clarity I've ever witnessed.
Yeah.
And that's a thing about my childhood, about being raised, that I do feel fortunate about, is that we didn't have any sort of religion. So I don't have the baggage that, like all my family did drugs, all of them, and I never did. So there was that. I don't know how that happened. I think it was just like me kind of rejecting what was going on in my life. Like, I just don't want to be any part of this. But then as an adult, when I tried psychedelics, I didn't have that like spiritual baggage for it. I was just like, let's try something new. And I think maybe being open to it was part of the reason I've had only good experiences.
yeah, that does matter. That's why I'm a little afraid, because I still got some stuff to work out. I have a lot of trauma, a lot of spiritual trauma. And maybe for my benefit, because it really like pushed me to who I am. Like I know not to use shame in any way. So maybe the two of you can walk me into that realm.
Yeah, I think there's lots of good resources. Are you familiar with Ram Dass at all? There's a lot of good early Ram Dass stuff. You can listen to talks or read about his experiments with psychedelics at Harvard.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I also want to, I guess I want to go back to when you said like, I want to just agree with you that, yeah, maybe recreation is also ceremonial. It really just depends on the individual's intention, right? It can get into this weird slippery slope maybe when we don't know ourselves. So I think that's where I go when I think about, oh, I'm really young and I don't really know myself, but I'm doing all these like mind altering things with people who maybe also don't know themselves, and that's when it gets weird, maybe potentially. Also, I had nothing really bad happened to me at all. It was great. But really, yeah, it just goes back to the person's intention. So it can be recreational and it can be ceremonial. Like recreation is also important. And if we make everything, reverence is important, but if we make everything so serious, then like we're sucking the joy out of life. So we need both. Like we need time to be like, this is a rite of passage, because we've lost that as people in this modern world, right? We've lost rites of passage and we've lost wisdom keepers. I mean, it's coming back, but we've lost wisdom keepers that sit at the head of the circle and say, all right, we're going on a journey, but I got you. And that's what you're doing in therapy too. It's a small circle. It's one-on-one usually, but hopefully that's what a good plant medicine facilitator is doing. Whether it's one person or a group, they're the wisdom keeper. And it's important because it is tied to the earth, which we have lost. We don't touch grass, maybe, or some people don't. A lot of people don't. Britt doesn't.
I do now. I make it a point
does
too.
Now.
Sand too. Ugh,
yeah.
I love the beach.
Some mixing. Yeah, it's like we have to mix it too, because it has to be about, like, the end game always kind of feels like it has to be about feeling joy. What are we doing this for if it's not to feel better?
Joy is such an important topic. I do want to say that I'm reconnecting with nature and the grass. Like I'm making a point to take my shoes and my socks off and walk. Regardless, if my dog's out, I don't know what she's done and where she's done it. But, I still want to have that connection. And I don't feel like I could really do that in Texas. So, yeah, so I'm making it a point to do that and to touch trees, like to just like touch the bark and just listen to the trees and make sure to go for a few walks a day. So, um, and I would like to become like a practitioner. Like I would like to help clients heal through psychedelic means, but I found that uh other guides like don't want therapists to do that because they're maybe so conditioned in their own models. Like, but the stronger part of my background is spirituality. So maybe I would fit right in, but I just haven't pursued it yet.
Yeah, that's interesting that that's been your experience because I feel like I either know of or know several like psychedelic integration coaches that either come from a therapist background or are also therapists. I mean, I know there's like this weird assuming there's probably this like weird gray area when you're dealing with something that is potentially illegal, but yeah, depending on where you
Yeah,
are.
I guess where you are, yeah.
Oh yeah, depending. Not I think what is it? It's psilocybin is either legalized or decriminalized in the state of Colorado. That's very, very recent. Uh, and also cannabis. And is there anything else? I think it's Oregon that just decriminalized all of them, which is that was such a huge triumph, in my opinion. And yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to add one thing that popped into my head. I also meditate too. That's another means of healing for me. And I feel like if you can get into meditation that feels good to you and you can let yourself go deep, it can be like psychedelics. And I think that is a good path. That's a good, I don't know. I feel like when you have the psychedelics, you're in a place that feels totally new, but also feels totally natural, like you've been there before. And for me, it reminds me maybe of being a child when I was somehow tapping into something that I lost after childhood. You know what I mean? Where you can, in your mind, you can actually be somewhere that might be beyond your physical body. And I've experienced that with meditation as well.
Thanks for saying that. I'm see that's how I've been conditioned is if you want to have that experience, you better meditate. You can't use the substances to get there, but everybody has free will but it is the same, and it's also like there's an enhancement, I think, of that experience. So at least with cannabis, that's what I can speak about. And then meditating. And that's like a cardinal sin in some groups. But I think if I didn't rebel just a little bit and experience that for myself, I just would never know that that's the same avenue. I mean, it's all the same. I don't think
Whatever gets you there is
That's true.
it's important. Whatever gets you there gets you there, as long as it's not hurting you or someone else or false. As long as there's some sort of truth to it. Just like maybe going to church is the way for someone to get there. For me, meditation is a way to get there. For some people, it's plant medicine, and it can be a little bit of all of that. And I've known a lot of people that have done plant medicine, had their experience, and been like, "Wow, I'm here. I don't I don't really need to do this anymore. I've seen what I need to see." And I kind of feel like that too. I'm happy to do it again, and I probably will, but like I felt like I got what I needed in like one major ceremony, you know?
I've considered ayahuasca before, and I had a couples therapist tell me, like, almost shame me about it. Like, this is really powerful stuff, and you should know what you're doing. And he had no idea my spiritual background. Like, I've been studying longer than you have. Like, but it's not, I don't have to compare. I don't have to be better than anybody, but it just it's hard to find information about it that doesn't come with that. This is my personal opinion about it. Like, I don't care.
Right.
Right.
There are a lot of views, and there have been people that haven't had great experiences. There's an episode we did with a men's coach, Steve Maeda, if anyone wants to listen to that has a slightly different view, or stories of other people's experiences with plant medicine, which obviously is different for everyone.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to hear someone else's take and other people's stories. And theirs came from like drug addiction.
People in recovery
going to do ayahuasca and maybe not having the right integration afterwards and being able to process that. And that kind of sours some people from it too. So it's definitely got to be a thing that you're ready for and that you have support to do.
That's true. And I also just want to say that you have to feel the call to want to do it. And maybe those people were like desperately seeking for something.
Right.
And there's no shame in that either, because if you're in a desperate situation, you're going to be desperate, like that's what it's going to be. But just to go back to what you said, like if you were interested in it, then that might be a sign that there's something there for you. And we get, as humans in this society of like capitalism and over-consumer everything, it's like becomes where it's like, I've done it 60 times and I do this. And there's a lot of people that's their authentic path. And there's probably some people that's not. And they're just like broing out. It's just another way to like be on top.
Right. Because the truth is, it can help you get there, but until you're ready, you're not getting there. You're not getting where you need to be until you're ready on the inside, whether you know it or not, So there's plenty of tools, but
that's true with therapy too, because people will spend so much time, so much of their lives in therapy. Feel like I'm still, things are still the same in my life, and it's like, well, it might not be the time. You may not be ready for that. You may not be, and being ready looks like ready to like truly be vulnerable, truly do the work that comes. It's not just what happens in the therapy room. It's what how you utilize that in your everyday life. Same thing for meditation for me. Like, I've studied meditation all my life. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm meditating every day, if I'm not like integrating that wisdom into my life, like the way that I treat people, the way I treat myself, like there's a lot that comes with it, and I'm just not going to get the benefit if I don't go all in. So,
right. There's nothing that's separate. So if we're like separating any healing from any part of our daily life, from our work, from our relationships, then like we are definitely not getting the full benefit.
Yeah. I'm still learning these things as well, and I think I'm learning that through like being in the public and like realizing that I have always like wanted to do something artistic. Like, I guess podcasting is artistic, but like making music, singing and dancing, performing, something like that. But I always felt like that was too selfish for some reason. And that's the wrong way to look at it. Like, I felt that way for most of my life, and I'm like closeted and like I go dance alone, and I try to like hide my singing and roll up my windows, and like, but that can really be something healing for people. Like, that can, like I need to find a way to truly integrate all parts of myself and express that and do that without fear, because this project, this podcast taking off on its own. Like it's like, like I'm investing my time in it, but it's becoming so many different things that I didn't plan on. So, um, yeah, I'm trying to open up more. I want to ask, I don't think I did a good job when I was on your show talking about like how we met each other, like how we know each other. I was just a huge dork because I didn't want to really talk about myself, but how do we know each other, guys?
Well, I cast you as hot girl number 2 in a rap video. If we want to be blunt about it.
Oh my, I have to tell you my experience with this because a friend of mine that we're no longer friends. It's fine. It's fine. It happens. I said yes, probably because I just wanted to say yes to my friend. And then I was like, I shouldn't do this. And so I went back and forth about it. And I think I even asked my sisters, and they were like, don't do it. Like, I was getting like bad advice about it. And I think I like said, like, even the day of, I was like, I can't do it. And it caused a conflict between me and her. And like, I had obviously ended up coming. But I'll tell you, like, getting to this $1 million mansion or whatever it was, like, the three of us were like, for sure something's gonna go down. So let's all stick together. We went to the bathroom together and took our purses. Like, obviously these are rappers. Like, what? And then it just so happens that there were vegan sandwiches there. And I'm a vegetarian. I was like, this is I think I ate like 4 of those ham vegan sandwiches. They were so good. They're great. I wanted to share with you that I was not totally on board because I didn't have support, and I like changed my makeup and like it just almost fell apart from my end before it happened.
And I'll clarify to the listeners. I was being funny by saying I cast you as hot girl number 2. I just thought that'd be a funny thing to say. But it was more of I reached out to our mutual friend and was like, we need some women to be in this party scene for this rap video. So it wasn't as nefarious as I made it sound.
And also, this whole story is just so funny to me because, well, I was there, and this is our friend's house, and they're like just a normal family. You know, it's like probably we had to like close the kids' bedroom. So even though it was like this big, nice house, and you know, it's funny to hear someone say, like, we better take our purses when it's, you know, I mean, I get it. Because if I was going there and I didn't know the people, who knows? I would have felt the same way. But to hear it and be like, oh, like that's where our kids go to birthday parties and see Santa and stuff. It's just, it's funny. It was a fun day. Yeah. It's cool to be a part of completely random things like that. Yeah. I also agree that I like feel introverted, especially around musicians and music, even though I have like such a deep love for music. And I probably didn't talk to Little Flip that day at all, but I was like fangirling, you know?
He is very quiet and very chill. It's like such a normal guy.
Yeah.
The one time that I did talk to him was when we were sitting in the movie theater at the house, and we were just like in between scenes, and I don't know. I was just trying to make small talk because I was a little nervous too, and I was just like, "Yeah, so how's the weather in Houston?" And he's just like, "Oh," and he just went on about the weather, you know. And it was just like the most normal guy, and it wasn't at all like, you know, rap video. Yeah, it was very chill. We tried to make it look very rap video, and I think it worked. But
it did. It turned out great, and I'm like kind of sort of dancing. I just like didn't know what to do, and right after that, we were late for like what my first activist meeting or something. Like, and I was like supposed to be presenting my water project. Like, so I'm like all dressed up. It was like an inappropriate like shift into like, let me talk about how I'm going to help people. Try to leave this rap video.
It's all one. We're all one.
Right,
It's all the same
right.
thing. Rap video,
We
activism.
we need it
It's all
all.
good.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I want to ask if there's any other projects besides your podcast that you're working on that you want to promote and how people can find you and all of that.
I am an audio engineer and music producer, so I'm available for that. I'll record your music. I'll produce it. I edit podcasts. If anybody has a podcast they need edited. My current musical project, the music that I make is called The Destructors Club, and it is post-punk dub, and it's a project I started with help from Lee Scratch Perry and Mark Stewart, Big Youth and Scientist, and some other friends, and it's an ongoing project where I collaborate with a lot of people, and I guess that's what I've got going on. How about you, Lindsay?
What an interesting question, because I feel like I'm in such a highly transitional space that I'm like, I don't know. For work that I offer, I work with people one-on-one, intuitive somatic sessions, and I teach mindfulness. And sometimes I'll do like group offerings and group classes. I don't have anything coming up. As far as projects, that I guess I'm just interested in that question because I'm like, what am I? I have things that I'm slowly working on, like writing projects, like a screenplay. Maybe there's some kind of book or short story in there. But being it's so transitional right now, you know how things get like shelved in life. So I'm in a space in my life where I'm trying to like just even further anchor in what I actually want to do, but also be responsible and have income, you know? Yeah.
And you do provide one-on-one sessions with people still.
Yeah.
And can you explain what somatic work is?
Yeah.
I think that for me, that was a word that until you started with it, I had never heard of it, and I don't know what that is.
That's a great question. That the answer to it is somatic work is basically a healing modality that deals with the body. So where Anura talks through people's past, their pain or their present, what they're going through, when I work with someone, we feel it in the body. And that's really the difference, that it can create a new level of freedom for someone that has a hard time talking about what they're going through, or maybe when they talk about it, they're like disassociating. And so the story continues to loop. But when you're working on it somatically, the story matters so much less. And that when I started working with a somatic therapist, I was like in the throes of, I was coming out of PTSD, didn't really know that. And it created so much freedom because my pain could just be like, oh, it's this here in my chest. And then I would just feel it and work with it and talk to it. And maybe there's some story or some memory in there, but it's not like a whole play, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Sure.
And then the intuitive piece in that is when I'm working with someone, I'm guiding them through, okay, is there something going on in your chest? Like maybe what I'm picking up on hopefully is in tune with what they need to work through. Yeah. And there is a level of movement involved. It can be really big or really small. And that's another thing I always like to tell people, because some people might think like, okay, this is like movement. I'm going to be like, I need to like jump up and down or whatever. And the real truth is the movement might all be internal. So it might just be feeling what it feels like in my belly, or you might want to jump up and run around the room, and they're both equally as important.
I think that's great. I have some experience with somatic work, and EMDR has that piece to it. Finding the pain points and desensitizing those as well. So I'm familiar, but I would like to do some more work. So maybe I could learn some things from you. Yeah, really.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I would also love to explore EMDR more.
Hey, I definitely can't treat friends and family, but they've like in my training they've encouraged us to like do some of the simple it's kind of like meditation, but practice some of that with friends and family specifically so that I don't know, you get some experience before you're you're like doing like mental surgery is kind of what how they explain it. Um uh, and I want to make a joke to you, Britt, because you are a music producer and I like love to sing and stuff. So if I were ever to send you anything and it was terrible, would you be honest and tell me that it's terrible?
Look.
Okay. Not saying I guess those words, just not saying it's terrible, but this is what we can work on to improve. Okay. Okay. Hey, I wrote my first song last year and I love to write. I wanted to be a writer before I was 10 years old. Like I really wanted to be a writer. So writing things is fine. That's an easy thing for me to do, but writing a song is different. And then like also singing the song. So one of my favorite bands I'm trying to get on my show uh, is Mac Ayres. He performs with other musicians as well, and they have their own careers, but they tour together. I took one of Chris Anderson's beat. I think it's like promised to somebody else. I think somebody else used the beat, which I'm sure I could still probably use it, but with his permission. But I just took that and I like developed a song, and then I like gave up because it's just like it's hard to do that. It's hard to make music, and it's harder to share it with people, I think. So
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's the next step is to let other people hear it and give you feedback or just sit on it for a while. Don't listen. That's what I do sometimes when I'm in a rut and I'm like, is this even good? Do I even need to keep doing this? Then I'll not listen for a month and then go back with fresh ears and be like, oh, this was good. I was just overthinking it. You know what I mean? Or somebody could hear it and be like, oh, you know what this needs? Do this, do a breakdown or something really easy. And you'll be like, oh, that's exactly what that needed. It'll transform the whole song.
that's what I want. I don't want it to be like super serious. I just I don't want to hand out, and I don't want a lot of attention about it. And I don't know how to like live in the closet and live in the public, but I'd like for it to be fun. I just want like feedback from somebody that knows what they're talking about without it being like a thing. So, um, oh no. Okay, okay. Okay, well, I have a final question. And then you can ask me questions if you have any, but don't feel pressured. My show is called Freedom to Fight. So my final question is, what does freedom look like to you?
Ooh. I would say the autonomy to live my life in my best way possible without hindering anyone else's way of life. But yeah, I guess. Yeah, that sounds right.
Now I don't know how to answer. I think that was a good answer.
That's hard. I feel like there's always something you can add to that.
That's
but
true.
I'll just keep it simple.
Yeah. Freedom to me is it's like this the slowness with clarity and creativity. Those are kind of like my top 3 things that I need to feel free.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. So yours more of like on a personal level,
And you're thinking more like,
and I'm more thinking of like a global
yeah.
freedom.
Okay, so
Oh,
that's
that's
why.
interesting.
So now
Yeah.
we should flip it and try this. And that's why I was trying to think like, oh, what does freedom mean to me, like on a larger scale? And I think it's what you said. What does freedom mean to you, though, for you?
Ooh. I think that's something I need to think about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess being able to do the things I want to do with no hindrance. So really, it's kind of the same thing, just on a smaller level.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Having the means and the support to do what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
What makes me happy. Yeah.
You need support for freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this idea of like freedom means like Lone Ranger style, and I think that's just can't be true,
Yeah,
right?
can't be true, yeah.
we need support to really
Yeah.
be free.
Yeah. Freedom is I mean, yeah, I guess there's a personal freedom, but really when I think about freedom, I think of it as a community issue.
Yeah.
Just, yeah, within, yeah, interesting. Do you have an answer for that?
What's your like collective freedom to you?
Oh, don't ask. Okay, this off the couch because I have not thought about this whatsoever. I would agree with both of you. You know, freedom, with support. I don't think that freedom is being on your own, and it may not. I think it's subjective, just like trauma is subjective. Like, freedom for me is freedom to think and to speak and to express without like having to look over my shoulder or cater to anybody's one, this should look the way I should look, the way that people want me to, I should do the things that people want me to do. Like having freedom from that and freedom to just, to fully be myself. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever get to that point where people get to know me, beyond what I'm sharing now. But it would be nice to feel safe to do that, because I think I think if I allow myself, I'll really develop into somebody I don't even know yet. Like I feel like if I put my time and attention towards things, it just kind of blossoms into things. So just freedom to express and to create and just to fully be myself without like all of the crap, all of the judgment, all of the, the criticisms and people trying to control my life. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, without caring what they think, because they're probably going to be there, right? But it's like an opportunity, because I feel all the same things that you mentioned. I'm like, oh, I don't want to like really share what I really want to do. But really, I'm then just catering to someone. I'm catering to someone else's perception of what they like think I am. And it's not based in reality anyway. Yeah.
Well, we could have a whole episode, I think, on
true,
this.
yeah.
This is just, and this reminds me of us all being from Texas, like what freedom means to like what the community was there and growing up there, and even like, wow, just thinking what other people's concept of freedom is, which is so much different than anything I could even imagine as being freedom. Like, especially there's on a personal level is like freedom for me. Like only the self,
Yeah. Yeah. And to only do like what I have been prescribed by my surrounding people is okay. Like that's even also their freedom.
Yeah.
Because it won't sway I mean, at least in my experience.
Yeah. whole other
For those
episode.
people. Yeah, that's a different episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man. Yeah. Right. To have real collective freedom, like every single person has to be so willing to always turn back to love, you know, that is this level of selflessness that we don't often
We've gotten
see.
just like the grass, we've gotten so far away from love.
Yeah.
We don't want to put our feet in the love.
Yeah.
Wow.
I really enjoyed our conversation. I do want to say one final thing, but I want to give you space to ask me anything you want, and no pressure. If you don't have any questions, it's totally fine too.
Do you have a question? Okay, well, what do you suggest couples? Like, what's your top suggestion for a couple to work on their communication?
Oh goodness, great question. Hmm. I think that it's been a little while since I've worked with couples, but uh, I think the last prescription I gave to my couples was to. This is I'm borrowing from Esther Perel, so she's a world renowned. Yeah. She suggests that when you're trying to work through a conflict with your partner to sit on the floor and like you're like removing kind of those barriers, but you're not gonna like be super argumentative and aggressive towards someone when you're being more vulnerable. Like you're literally on the floor talking, maybe even holding hands, and giving full eye contact. I think that the idea behind healing in a relationship is realizing that your other is you're the same. You're looking at yourself when you're looking at your partner, and to try to make space for yourself and the other, but realizing that anything that you're doing to your other, you're doing to yourself, and vice versa. There's just no separation, and that expands throughout all of humanity. But if you can practice that with somebody that you share such intimacy with, then I really think that will change the world. Like I really think that investing in romantic loving relationships is what we're struggling with. I mean, definitely through parent child relationships and all different types of relationships, but I just feel like I have experienced such toxicity in my romantic relationships, so many abusive relationships with my partners, through my family, through their partners, through their friends, experiencing that it's like it's hard to believe that that's something that can be achieved, but I believe that that's something that we're all supposed to do, that we're all going to benefit from if you choose to be in a romantic relationship. Because there's asexual people that don't want to have that type of relationship, and that's totally fine. But if you're in that position to see it as a service, that I'm honoring myself through honoring you. So I hope that answers the question.
That's good, I think.
Yeah. You know what I do want to mention, or I want to plug it when it feels plug appropriate? Okay, cool.
So yes, if you tell people how they can find you, and anything you want to share otherwise.
Well, what I want to share is that we have a free guide through our website, Can We Start Over Podcast. That's our 3 top ways that we stay in conscious partnership. So it's a completely free guide. If anyone wants it, go to the website, sign up, and you'll get our little freebie.
Nice, thank you. Your podcast is canwestartover.com. What is it?
canwestartoverpodcast.com.
Yeah.
And on Instagram, it's canwestartoverpod.
Yeah. And there, I don't know if we really actually explored this in the intro, but a year ago, as a family, as a married partnership, and with 3 kids, we decided to sell our home, leave our jobs, sell most of our possessions, and travel around the world. And so we started a podcast to talk about our starting over journey, and then talk to other people who start over in all these like cool, creative, amazing ways. And that's what the podcast is about.
Yeah.
I just want to mention, because I wrote this down, I think I saw an Instagram post that both of you posted, something like that of you and your children. And it just seems like your podcast is like honoring like your family and your children and your relation. It's like, I never use this word right. Like paying homage to everything that you've been given through those relationships. It's like honoring them through this podcast. So that's how I see it anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
I hope, I'm really glad, because it does feel like a place to just be real and for us to connect and yeah, to honor our kids. That it really feels true.
I'll tell you, having a podcast with each other, I feel like we're in therapy a lot of the time, because things will come up that we're talking about that wouldn't normally come up in conversation. And we're just in a spot where we're just like free flowing in front of a microphone. And I feel like I get a lot out after it. I'm just like, wow, I feel like I just went to therapy.
Yeah.
It's great. And then I mentioned that to somebody, and they were telling me about someone they knew who they and their partner pretended to have a podcast, where they would just sit down once a week and pretend they had a podcast, and that's how they would work their stuff out. And I think that's a really interesting idea. It's worked for us.
Yeah. It's really fun to have something that is creative and hopefully helpful. I mean, it's at least helpful to us, so it is helpful. That is also not like, we're not tied to the outcome. It's
Right.
just for the creation of it. You know, I mean, we hope people listen, and also it's fun. So who cares if anyone
Right.
listens? You know, I wonder if you feel that way about your podcast.
Wanted to help people. But I'm sorry. I'm going to turn the attention back to your podcast, because it has been helpful to me. Like, especially like right now when I'm starting over once again, you know, just to hear from people that I'm familiar with that are starting over. Like, it's okay to start over, and it's okay for it to look like this, and it's okay to feel like that. And it's helped me a lot. So, I find it to be really, really beautiful that you're doing it as a couple. And I feel like if not every relationship is capable of doing that, but I do feel like that's like a step in evolution. Like, being able to create together is a higher form of love. So I to say that.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. No problem. Thank you so much for coming on my show. I'm gonna end it here if that feels good to you. Yeah, no problem. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. Okay.
Yeah. No problem. Thank you so much for coming on my show. I'm gonna end it here if that feels good to you. Yeah, no problem. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording. Okay. And that's it. I want to thank everybody for joining me on this episode. I'm not going to talk for a bit, for too much longer. I'll actually just leave all of the info, the way to contact me, Instagram, all the social medias for me, for Lindsey, for Britt, for their podcast, all down in the description. If you'd like to contact me, the info will be there. If you'd like to support me, the info will be there. And thank you again for listening. I have several more episodes coming up, so stay tuned.